The NFL offseason is right around the corner for nearly 2/3 of the league, and for some teams you can say that it's already started. And in today's video, we're going to discuss 4 things NFL teams need to do in order to either get back to the playoffs or in order to remain in the playoffs for the 2024 season and improve their chances of winning a Super Bowl. And just because we are discussing some things NFL teams need to do this offseason doesn't mean it's exclusive to rebuilding teams and that there are no contenders in today's video. Yes, as you can imagine, there are going to be teams that lose double-digit games, and despite them losing double-digit games, I don't think they are perpetually screwed or going to be stuck in mediocrity for the next several years. And in fact, if they make a few key moves this offseason, they will be on the path to improving within their conference and competing for a chance to go to the big game. What is important to remember is for most of the teams in today's video is this will not be a one-year turnaround, but there is a lot to dive into and several situations to dive into, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video with the Chicago Bears and what they need to do this offseason, and it is to improve offensively. We've seen the Bears flash at times throughout the 2023 season of how good they can be when they're on, and examples of this include the Broncos game back in Week 4, the Commanders game in Week 5, and I would argue both Lions games in Week 11, and most recently in Week 14. Obviously, their record doesn't do them much justice as they are 5-8, but after starting the year 0-4, they have won 5 of their last 9 games, and even some of the games they've lost during this stretch, you can argue they very easily should have won. And they are in a prime position in the 2024 draft to get their quarterback of the future in Caleb Williams. I am a firm believer that Carolina will not win enough games to move them out of the number 1 spot, and this would put Chicago in a situation where you almost have to draft Caleb or Drake. I like Justin Fields a lot and loved him coming out of Ohio State, but I don't see a reality where you can afford to pass on Caleb Williams, knowing this same franchise passed on Patrick Mahomes 6 years ago. And if in the scenario they do pass on Caleb and acquire another king's ransom of draft picks, what happens if Justin doesn't play to the level we know he can in 2024, and he becomes the bad version of Justin, which we've seen at times throughout his career? We did a live stream prior to Week 14, and somebody asked what I thought would happen with the number 1 pick, and I pretty much said that any mock we do this year will have Caleb, or even Drake for that matter, go number 1. But aside from bringing in a new franchise quarterback, Chicago is at the moment picking 7th in the draft, and Ohio State's Marvin Harrison Jr. will probably be out of the equation for them to pair with Caleb, but LSU's Malik Nabers is not. Malik is 6 foot 200 pounds and is an electric football player and had over 1,500 yards and 14 touchdowns for the Tigers in 2023. Having an offense with Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Malik Nabers, and Cole Kmet is a big improvement for the Bears, especially in the long term, and it's a very realistic possibility for them. Pertaining to Justin, I really think he can be a solid player somewhere else, and the 2 destinations I would love for Justin to go is either Pittsburgh or Atlanta. Both teams have weapons for Justin to throw to, whether it's George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, or Deontay Johnson in the Steel City, or Drake London, Kyle Pitts, or Bijan Robinson in Atlanta. Fields is too talented at 24 years old to basically wither away on a team's bench and basically say, oh, he's just another first-round disappointment. Coaches can sell themselves on a lot of things at the quarterback position, and they can especially sell themselves on Justin Fields and the flashes he's shown, whether athletically or at times as a passer, which he has improved over the course of his NFL career. There are Bears fans out there that would probably want to see Fields work with both DJ Moore and Malik Nabers, but unfortunately I don't think that's a reality for them, and there's simply not many quarterback prospects like Caleb Williams or Drake May that quite literally fall into your lap because of a trade you made almost a year ago. I think the best case scenario for the Bears is they get a quarterback and a receiver in round 1 and get a second round pick back in a trade for Justin Fields. Next up is the Atlanta Falcons, and one thing they need to improve on this offseason and one thing they need to address in a big way is pass rush. Their leading pass rusher in pressures in 2023 is David Onyemata, who has just 29 pressures on the year, and in today's NFL, one of the things you have to have if you are going to seriously compete is pass rush. And this was one of the holes the Falcons had to address last offseason, and it's one of the holes they'll have to address again this offseason. Obviously, the first-round picks they've had in each of the past few years have been pretty publicized, for better or worse, because a lot of people play fantasy football and understandably get frustrated when a guy drafted either number 4 or number 8 overall doesn't get the rock. But Atlanta is not a great team at the moment, and they have an opportunity to get better this offseason, as the 2024 edge class in free agency is going to be loaded. Obviously, not all of these guys will end up hitting free agency because teams will either franchise tag them or work out a long-term deal, but guys like Danielle Hunter, Chase Young, Josh Allen, Brian Burns, and Jadeveon Clowney are all scheduled to be free agents this offseason, and there's plenty of more guys that are scheduled to be free agents at this point in time. And despite Atlanta not being able to get after the quarterback consistently, their defense hasn't been that bad this year and are top 12 in points per game, and granted, you can argue they've played a pretty cupcake schedule for most of 2023, but the point stands that their defense is most of the time not flat out losing them games. And a team like Atlanta is in a tricky situation because they don't have the quarterback position figured out, and that always seems to be a problem with them. But while you are trying to figure that out, why not go get better at one of the most important positions in football? And even if you pay decent money for an edge rusher in free agency, I really don't think there should be anything stopping this team from going to get a pass rusher in the draft, and perhaps somebody like Laiatu Latu from UCLA if he's on the board. I like Arnold Ebiketie a lot, and he is leading this team in sacks on the year with 5.5 in 13 games, but I don't think Ebiketie is ever going to be a 14 or 15 sack player that can force opposing offenses to game plan around him. And after him, the Falcons have 3 other players with 3 or more sacks, and they are Calais Campbell, who is 37 years old, David Onyemata, who is 31 years old, and Bud Dupree, who will turn 31 this offseason. They have 1 pass rusher under 30 years old with 3 or more sacks on the year, and I don't think Atlanta is ready to compete with the big dogs of the conference by any means, but at some point they have to get out of this 5 to 7 win range, or maybe even 8 win range this year, and how do you do that? Well, you draft guys early that can get after the quarterback and potentially change the game. I don't think there's a Micah Parsons in this draft class, as Micah is a one-of-one player, but how beneficial would it be for this team to have Micah at the moment instead of Kyle Pitts? And that's kind of what I'm getting at. Draft a pass rusher in the first round, and not only do that, but go get one in free agency too. Next up is the Kansas City Chiefs, and this is a pretty clear one here, and it's to address the wide receiver position. And for the defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs, they look bad at times offensively, and it's because outside of Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice, there are no reliable options for this team. They're 8-5 in the year, and you can legitimately argue that Kadarius Toney has cost this team 2 games, and the difference between being 8-5 and 10-3 in this conference is substantial. I would be very shocked if the Chiefs get the number 1 seed and ultimately a first round bye, and I don't want to say that part is strictly due to Kadarius, but it's due to losing both the Lions and Bills games. And the Chiefs are in quite a situation here because they have a Super Bowl caliber defense, and despite their offense ranking 11th in points per game, they don't look anything like the Chiefs we've come to know over the past few years. This team has put up more than 21 points in just one of their past 6 games, and it was against the Raiders, who are probably going to be picking in the top 10, if not top 5 or 6 picks of the 2024 draft. The other 5 games were against the Broncos, in which they looked terrible, and a big credit to Denver's defense for that win. One was against the Dolphins, in which it took a defensive touchdown to beat them. One was against the Eagles, the Packers, and most recently, the Bills. And all 5 of those teams could make the playoffs, meaning in the last 5 games against what could be 5 playoff teams, the Chiefs have averaged just 16.6 per game, and if you take away the defensive touchdown against the Dolphins, that dwindles down to 15.2 points per game, and a big part of that is receiver play. Outside of Rashee Rice, their leading receivers are Justin Watson, Marcus Valdes-Scantling, and second-year player Sky Moore. Sky Moore has been a very disappointing player for Kansas City, and when they drafted him, I thought he could be a key contributor and not even be a consistent 1,000-yard player, but a guy that if Mahomes needs to lean on to make a play here or there because Travis is getting double-teamed or whatever the case may be, he could dump the ball to Sky Moore and that would be fine. but in nearly 2 full years, Sky has just 43 receptions for 494 yards and 1 receiving touchdown. To make matters worse, he was drafted just 2 picks after the Steelers' George Pickens, who eclipsed Sky's career numbers in his rookie year alone. Whether Kansas City goes for a receiver in the first round this year or opts to trade for a veteran, it's pretty simple that should be their number 1 priority this offseason. And not only would it help Patrick and the coaching staff out, but guys, Travis is 34 years old, and I'm not saying to avoid throwing to a future Hall of Fame tight end, but getting some of the load off of his plate would go a long way too, and help him avoid taking hits when and where he can. I like Marvin Harrison Jr.'s teammate Emeka Egbuka a lot, and I think he would do very well in this offense. And like we said with the Falcons, the Chiefs should essentially volume shoot at this position this offseason. Because outside of Rashee Rice, who by the way isn't elite by any means, this receiving core is bad. Even if you have to double dip in the draft and take 2 guys in the first 3 or 4 rounds, you have to do it while this team is in a Super Bowl window. This team can, in theory, win the Super Bowl any year with Patrick Mahomes, but when 87 decides to hang up the cleats, whenever that is, that job will become a hell of a lot harder. And the Chiefs have one goal this offseason: get as much receiving help as you can. Next up is the Patriots, and what they need to do this offseason is invest, and this cannot be emphasized enough, heavily into the offense. For their sake, I hope they finish with a worse record than the Cardinals and have the number 2 overall pick so they don't have to trade any assets to go up and get a franchise quarterback. But the point of them getting either Caleb or Drake and then actually putting assets around them stands. New England's offense in 2023 has been flat out bad at times, and this team is dead last in points per game, and they have 0 games with 400 or more yards of offense. They have 5 games with 7 points or less scored and have scored more than 21 points in a game once, which was against the Bills, whose defense is top 6 in points per game allowed. Go figure. But I really think the Patriots should move on from Bill Belichick and try and bring in a new offensive-minded head coach. And New England as a destination is not an attractive option at the moment to really any head coaching candidate, but if they can be guaranteed that they either get May or Williams, then they suddenly become an attractive situation. And after they get their quarterback of the future, what needs to be remembered with this team is it's not a 1-year turnaround. Their 3 leading receivers are Pop Douglas, Kendrick Bourne, and Devontae Parker, who scares, well, absolutely nobody. The one position New England will have to get better at as well this offseason is up front offensively, and that's really across the board, maybe aside from Trent Brown, but the point is 2024 for the Patriots should really be a redshirt year for whichever quarterback they draft. Let them make mistakes and let them grow alongside the young receiving options they're going to throw to. You don't accidentally have 5 games with 7 points or less in your first 13 games of the year, and you don't accidentally stumble into a 3-10 record. All good things come to an end at some point, and Bill will not coach forever. I really think the best thing Bill could do for the future of the Patriots is give them one of the quarterbacks, or at least put them in a position to be able to get one of the quarterbacks from this draft class. There is no offensive category where the Patriots rank in the top 15 of anything. Nothing. Jabril Peppers was caught on camera saying "you're lucky we're ass" to Saquon Barkley, and that summarizes the 2023 Patriots. But there is light in that lighthouse at Gillette Stadium, and they can get their guy in the future. Just make sure to get him some help and do not leave him out to dry. Because if he has what the Patriots quarterbacks have had this year, well, that would be setting him up for failure. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 30% of people watching are subscribed, and it helps the channel tremendously. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.